Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com. The USA Today NFL Wire site that covers, of course, your Arizona Cardinals. And we are in the series of the opponent preview shows where we've got 14 shows, ideally, against 14 Cardinals opponents for 2025. And in this edition of the show, we've got the Cardinals' last group. This is one of our divisional games where the Cardinals play the Los Angeles Rams. They play them twice in the last several weeks in that tough schedule to end the year where we go against, for 6 straight weeks, we have 4 games against division winners from last season, and that includes the Rams at home in week 14, and then closing the season on the road in LA. And joining me, as he has so many times previously, is Rams Wire managing editor Cam DaSilva. Cam, welcome back to the show as always. Covering the Rams, last year was after what happened in 2023. In 2024, they kind of rally to win the division. They win a playoff game. And what was last season, by the way? How was that?
It was a weird season. By week 5 or 6, I was like, there's no way they're going to make the playoffs. And even after the year before where they came back from that big deficit and still made the postseason, I would have been shocked if they wound up making the playoffs, and it's exactly what they did. They had an early week, I think it was a week 6 bye, and after that, they really just turned it on. The defense started to play better. They got healthier, and things just started to click. And late in the year, I think in their last 6 or 7 games, including the playoffs, I think they allowed fewer than 10 points 4 times. So the defense really came together, sacked the quarterback 16 times in the playoffs between Jalen Hurts and Sam Darnold against the Vikings and Eagles. So I think that kind of resurgence on defense really helped spark the run that they went on in the second half of the year.
And we look at the beginning of the year, really it was basically about health. And it was one, defensively, they hadn't found themselves. Obviously, the Cardinals beat up that 41-10 absolute drubbing. But it was also the offensive line as well, because I know against with the Cardinals, you were down, I think, 2 starters, and the Cardinals just took advantage of what they sacked Stafford, I think, 5 or 6 times. It was crazy. But then you look at the numbers and defensively, and they're staggering: 26-41, 24-24. Then after the bye, 15, 20, 20, 23, 22, 37 to the Eagles, but then 14, you have the shootout against the Bills, and then 6, 9, 9. Now, granted, it was against a bad 49ers team, against a bad Jets team, but they held the Cardinals to 9 points. And then they held the Vikings to 9 points in the wild card week before losing to the Eagles. What an actual kind of fun year. And it's frustrating because you go from this aging team to be teaming with young young offensive and defensive talent. And you go from Aaron Donald, and you've got Kobe Turner, you've got Jared Verse and Braden Fisk and Byron Young. And it seems you keep hitting on all these defensive players that are now young and still impactful. Kobe Turner has 8 sacks after he had 9 the year before. Byron Young has 7.5 sacks. You've got the defensive rookie of the year in Jared Verse, who, while he didn't have massive amounts of sacks at 4.5, apparently was in the backfield all the time. Then you get Braden Fisk playing well. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to watch from the same division.
Yeah, I bet they went from being such a top heavy roster with guys like Jalen Ramsey and Bobby Wagner and Ndamukong Suh was there at one point. Cooper Kupp was an expensive player before, and they had all these veterans who were pricey, and they moved on, and now they're just a roster full of young, talented players, and they've really nailed the draft. And it's not even first round picks and second round picks. It's I mean these mid round
They
guys like Puka
barely had
Nacua.
first round picks. What did they had one first round pick
Yeah,
in the last decade, practically?
yeah, since Jared Goff, yeah, and even this year they traded back and drafted Terrence Ferguson in the second round. So it's like they don't need all these top tier picks. They keep hitting on Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua and Kobe Turner's a third rounder, Byron Young's a third rounder, Braden Fisk was a second rounder. It's amazing what these guys can do with in the draft with Les Snead and Sean McVay just identifying really talented players and guys who have impressive work ethics. And I think they really target like seniors and redshirt seniors and experienced players who even have transferred up and gone to the FBS level from either being at a lower level or just transferring from a smaller school to a big school like Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. And they identify these guys and they do a good job developing them. And the culture that McVay's built has been really impressive. And it just somehow they get all these talented players and make it work. It's impressive.
We go to free agency, and the biggest, like obviously the biggest decisions that were made was the one to put Cooper Kupp on the trading back block, to then have Cooper then announce that, much to the dismay of the Rams, ultimately getting no offers because at that age, the cost that he was getting was going to be tough. And so he signs after he's cut, he signs with Seattle. So you lose Cooper Kupp, but you acquire Devontae Adams. You lose Christian Roseboom in free agency. DeMarcus Robinson, one of their backup, or they trade Jonah Jackson. Jonah Jackson, after only 1 year after signing to a big deal, they trade him to the Bears. You lose a couple of your defensive linemen. Neville Gallimore leaves to the Colts. Bobby Brown III leaves to the Panthers. Talk off-season losses. Are any of those losses, obviously acquiring Devontae Adams more than makes up for the loss of Cooper Kupp, but are any of those losses going to be felt going into this next season?
That's the thing. Not really. I mean, not to say that those players aren't good players, but Jonah Jackson barely played last year. He was injured and then got benched for Bo Limmer, who was a rookie. Joe Noteboom, who left in free agency, has been really, really struggling to stay healthy. DeMarcus Robinson, he was their number 3 receiver, but he might have a suspension coming, and that's kind of the reason that Les Snead and the Rams let him walk. So we'll see if he gets suspended. I don't think they're going to miss him terribly. They re-signed Tutu Atwell to kind of take over that wide receiver 3 role. Michael Hoyt was a good player. He's someone who left and signed with the Bills, but he got suspended. So he would have been missing time with the Rams anyway. And they drafted Josiah Stewart out of Michigan, so he can be their number 3 edge rusher. Christian Roseboom was kind of expendable. Hunter Long, a tight end, he was a backup and reserve. Didn't really do much. So not a lot of big losses, honestly. And they didn't make any huge splashes in free agency outside of Devontae Adams, but just made some really smart signings that kind of supplemented the roster and filled some of their holes.
How much of an impact will Devontae Adams have to the offense? Obviously, Puka Nacua has been incredibly productive. What does he bring that's different to the Rams' offense?
I think he's more of just kind of a one-on-one guy that can win against single coverage, man coverage, and not really need to have those inside releases from the slot like Cooper Kupp does. Not to say Cooper Kupp wasn't a great player. He was one of the best route runners in the league, but Devontae's someone you could just split out wide to the backside of the offense and let him go up against one-on-one up against another corner, and he's most likely going to win. And that's something that the Rams are going to kind of integrate into their offense more, where you don't have to have these dynamic route concepts and perfectly drawn up plays for guys to get open. And Devontae's going to do his work with his releases at the line, and he can win downfield still, even though he is 32. He's just a well-rounded receiver who is really going to help them in the red zone too. That's an area where they struggled. They've never really had like a great red zone receiver who can play vertical and really go up and win one-on-ones against another corner. A lot of their touchdowns are schemed up by McVay and getting guys open or running it with Kyron Williams. So I think Devontae, with his route running and the way that he gets open so quickly at the line of scrimmage, is really going to help that red zone offense.
The re-signing of Tutu Atwell was one of the surprises for me.
Yeah.
But there was that stretch, wasn't there, at the beginning of Puka's rookie year when Atwell had a significant role and produced at a really high level when was given the opportunity. Is that kind of what they expect or they believe that he can do now as like the legitimate number 3?
Yeah, that signing really caught me by surprise too. Not only that they did re-sign him after barely using him the last couple of years, but that they gave him $10 million fully guaranteed. So they really wanted him. Like that's a good contract for a guy who has 99 career catches and 4 touchdowns. But yeah, when guys have been injured, he's played really well. And then Puka comes back or Cooper Kupp comes back and Tutu just kind of goes back to the bench and is more of this like part-time player. He's probably playing 30% of the snaps when everyone's healthy and running a bunch of deep routes and these deep outs and deep ins and go routes. And he's not always a target. He doesn't always haul in the passes, but he draws pass interference a bunch. His speed just really opens up the offense because he forces these corners to respect his speed and they play off, and then he can run these in breaking routes or these comebackers and have a lot of separation. So there has to be a plan for him. If they don't integrate him more and get him the ball more and give him additional playing time, I think that contract's going to look really bad in hindsight. But if you're giving a guy $10 million fully guaranteed and you have an opening at wide receiver 3, he's got to contribute. So I think he's someone who could have a really good year. When you look at his numbers, like I mentioned, when Puka and Cooper Kupp have been injured, he really stepped up and played well and was efficient. So hopefully we'll see some of that as the number 3 receiver, and then see how it plays out for a full season, because he's never really had an opportunity to be that kind of starting receiver for a full year.
Another underrated addition was Poona Ford. Really good run-stopping interior defensive lineman. That's a really good addition, especially you lose Neville Gallimore and Bobby Brown. I think Poona Ford's better than either one of those guys, and you add him to you put him in the middle where you've got Braden Fisk and you've got Kobe Turner, who were both fantastic last year. That's how do the Rams keep doing that? Come on. What's that secret?
Yeah,
Why do they keep doing that?
That was a smart signing. Bobby Brown was most likely going to leave in free agency anyway. And I think he had 1 or 2 career sacks in 4 years with the Rams. And he kind of, he went on Twitter and was really critical of the way that he was used by the Rams, wanting to have more pass rush opportunities and wanted to have more chances to get sacks and pressures. And even in his last year here, he really had those opportunities and just didn't capitalize. So I think the Rams kind of were comfortable moving on. So you bring in Poona Ford, who I think is going to offer more, not only as a run stopper, but as a pass rusher. And when you put him in the middle of a defensive line that also has Kobe Turner and Braden Fisk, and then you got Jared Verse and Byron Young on the outside, I think he's going to have a lot of one-on-one opportunities with these centers or guards to apply some pressure. And as we know, interior pressure really rattles a quarterback and flushes them from the pocket, and then that's where Jared Verse and Byron Young can clean up things on the outside.
Coleman Shelton, the return of Shelton, is he expected to be their starting center this year, or is that Bolimer still going to do that?
No, it's most likely going to be Shelton. I think they gave him $12 million for 2 years, and just based on that contract, it looks like a starter contract. And I don't remember if McVay said that's the plan, but I'm pretty sure. I think Les Snead might have. So they're going to try to go with him. He has more experience. I think just more comfortability with Matthew Stafford as far as just pre-snap identification and blitz call-outs and things like that and communication. So they wanted someone with more experience rather than going back to Limmer, who's going into his second year.
And then obviously the more recent element is that Alaric Jackson getting the blood clots again. So they signed DJ Humphries. Do you see, is there enough unknown about Jackson's condition that DJ might end up starting?
Oh yeah, yep, for sure. McVay even admitted he said there's some real questions there at left tackle, and I mean this isn't you're not talking a high ankle sprain or a fractured leg or these things where they have clearer timetables for recovery. I mean blood clots you don't really know. I mean it depends on the person, the severity. I don't know enough about it to speak on how long he's going to be out. I do know in 2022 he missed the last 9 games of the season with it. That was kind of a lost year anyway. But so I don't know if they would have brought him back. I'm sure they weren't rushing him back in a lost year. But I mean, that's a pretty significant health scare, and we've got what 2 months, 3 months to 2.5 months till the start of the season, and it's not like he's going to go from doing nothing to immediately starting in week 1. So he's going to have to get some training camp reps and then practice reps once the season starts to really get back up to speed. So I think we could see DJ Humphrey starting week 1.
Nice quotes. He's quite entertaining, especially like if he's in a backup role, you're probably not going to get he probably won't get talked to as much. But if he ends up being the starting left tackle, he's entertaining. He's funny. He sounds like Shaq. Like when he talks, like his voice sounds like Shaq. Dude is hilarious, by the way. He's hilarious.
That's great.
And assuming that he's fully recovered, he's good. He's also good. So
yeah,
that's a nice addition. Let's move on to the draft. Coming next on the Rise of Sierra podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the. Let's move on and talk about the Rams draft work. That's coming next on Rise of Sierra. We're back on the Rise of Sierra podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the web as we talk about the NFL draft and the Rams, what they did in 2025. And while they did have a first round pick, they traded out. And so they still only had one first round pick since Jared Goff. But in a move that allowed them to pick up an extra first round pick for next year. Are they might this be Matthew Stafford's last year? Is that kind of what they are preparing for?
Yeah, very easily could be. His contract runs through the end of the 2026 season. So technically he's under contract next year, and they don't exactly have to tweak his contract again like they did this year and last year. But it's conceivable that this is his last year, and it might depend on whether he gets injured or stays healthy or how the team outlook is for 2026. I think he's most likely going to finish his career with the Rams at this point. I mean, he had a chance to leave for more money to go to the Raiders or Giants and passed it up. So I would imagine at his age and this point in his career, he's going to want to finish it with the Rams.
And if like, not that I'm wishing this, but if he wins another Super Bowl, that catapults him into like Hall of Fame status. Really, it does. Like he's got numbers, he's got volume, but then to have the 2 championships with the Rams would really push him into the next stratosphere of a career, and that's really kind of fantastic. So, but no, so they tried out of the first round. I hear that there's a lot of buzz about this tight end, Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon.
Yeah, he was tested as the most athletic tight end at the combine, so that gives you a little taste of what they're looking at with him. And the last few years, I mean, the Rams have been looking for like a young tight end to build around. They tried to go up for Dalton Kincaid a couple of years ago, didn't end up trading up for him. They tried to go up for Brock Bowers last year, didn't wind up getting him. There was rumors of them trying to trade up again this year, and some of it was reportedly for Tet McMillan before the Panthers took him at number 8. But I mean, they very easily could have been trying to trade up for Loveland or Warren too. So they really wanted a tight end to build around. Tyler Higbee's getting older. Ferguson's a good young player with a lot of athleticism, upside, and speed. And McVay and Les Snead are already talking about doing more 12 personnel packages and getting these 2 tight ends on the field together, which is something that's rare for this offense. They lean so heavily on 11 personnel. It's like 95% of the time they're in 11 personnel with 3 receivers. So we could see a little bit of a scheme change on offense with this selection.
It would make sense if you've got a guy that you like out there. Now, I saw one of the posts that you wrote that they're comparing it, like someone compared him to one of the great Rams tight ends from the 70s. But Is he going to be like, is he going to be closer to that? Is he going to be more Tyler Higbee, or is he like Gerald Everett and he's just fine? I think he's fine.
Yeah, that's kind of the Gerald Everett's a good comp because he was a good receiver coming out of college, good receiver in the NFL, and we'll see how Ferguson does with blocking and the other assignments that come with playing tight end. And it's such a steep learning curve going from college to the NFL at that position because you have so many responsibilities. But I think they have really high expectations for him. McVay compared him. He said he has similar mannerisms to Travis Kelce. So we'll see how that kind of plays out for them. But big body tight end, good receiver. He can kind of command the middle of the field as a receiver, where he can be like that seam stretcher and go downfield and make plays, which is something they've lacked from that position for a while. Tyler Higbee just has lost a step, especially after tearing his ACL at the end of the 23 season. So getting a young guy with good speed like Ferguson has, I think it's going to kind of open up the offense a little bit.
Going to round 3, they pick up Josiah Stewart, edge out of Michigan. A pretty deep edge class, we remember, because the Cardinals picked up Jordan Birch in the 3rd round. Lots of guys that there were lots of athletic. What you said that Stewart likely is going to fill Hoyt's role, where he's kind of edge rusher number 3 behind Byron Young and Jared Verse.
I think he has the potential to do that. Yeah. They're not going to baby him. They've really unleashed these rookies pretty quickly as far as these edge rushers when they come into the league. Like Jared Verse was a starter week 1. Byron Young played a ton as a rookie in 2023. So I don't think they're gonna hold his hand much. And he's such an aggressive and physical player where he's almost that perfect like rotational designated pass rusher where he plays with so much fire and so much aggression that he can come in for a handful of snaps and really kind of ignite the defense and provide a spark when these other guys need a breather. So it's going to be between him. Brennan Jackson is another 4th rounder or 5th rounder from the year prior. Nick Hampton has a chance to assume that role, but they're going to need someone to step up behind Verse and Young because those guys can't play 95% of snaps every week.
Then we go to the day 3 picks where you get Jarquez Hunter, running back out of Auburn, Ty Hamilton, DT out of Ohio State. That I liked him. Chris Paul Jr., linebacker out of Ole Miss, and then out of Pitt, Kanata Mumpfield, receiver. Any of those day 3 players expected to make any sort of impact this season?
I think Hunter could as that change of pace back, but McVay historically has really not given running backs much of a chance as rookies. He likes to slowly bring them along, and they do have obviously Kyron Williams and Blake Corum, and Corum didn't even play much last year. So that remains to be seen, but he has the most speed and explosiveness out of that running back group. Ty Hamilton, I think, can work into the rotation. He's not going to be a starter because the defensive line is so deep already. Chris Paul is the one that really caught my attention just because linebacker has been such a weak spot for the Rams in the last few years, especially last year after trading Ernest Jones. That was such a bizarre deal. But now you're bringing Chris Paul, who has good speed, good range. He's good in coverage. So that kind of complements the downhill play of like an Omar Spates, who could be a starter. Nate Landman is someone they signed in free agency. He's another downhill, like run stopping linebacker where Chris Paul can play back and play more zone coverage and help out against the pass more. So he's someone I like a lot. By all accounts, with pre-draft boards and where analysts had him going, I think that's a good value getting him in the 5th based on what analysts thought he would be. And then Kanata Mumpfield, I think he's going to have to work his way on through special teams, and we'll see how that goes. But another position that's pretty deep with those top 2 guys, Puka and Devontae. Then you got Tutu, you got Jordan Whittington. So he's got a chance to be the 5th receiver, but he's got some work to do too.
And anybody in there, what I recall was a large undrafted class. Is there anybody that's standing out in that have a chance to make any sort of impact, make the roster?
Sean Dolak from Buffalo. He was the FBS leader in tackles and unanimous All-American. I think he's someone who has kind of caught the attention of a lot of fans who are looking for these undrafted rookies to maybe make an impact. And again, just going back to that inside linebacker position, it's such a weakness, and it's so wide open that he's someone who could sneak onto the roster and, just like Omar Spates, maybe develop into a starting defender and go with it from there. But I mean, it's a deep roster as it is, so there's not a ton of openings. There's a lot of good players already that were on the roster, so these undrafted rookies are going to have their work cut out for them.
Coming up next to the Rise of Spirit podcast, the Best Hour of Cardinals Talk. Let's move on and continue to talk about the Rams season. What is expected in 2025? That's coming up next on Rise of Red. We're back on the Rise of Red podcast, Best Hour of Cardinals Talk on the web, talking to Cam DaSilva from Rams Wire. Talking about the Rams. This is our opponent preview show. The Cardinals face the Rams in weeks 14 and week 18. But the Rams 10-win season a year ago went to the second round of the playoffs. They win a playoff game, lose to the eventual champions. And so what are the expectations? We know that in the NFC West, it is competitive. They are basically the favorites with the 49ers because people expect the 49ers to more or less be back. What are sort of the expectations? Is this year, are Rams fans looking for a Super Bowl, or is that what are expectations? Like, I know they can, like, they could, but are fans expecting that type of 13-14 win year where they're the favorites going into the postseason?
Yeah, I mean, the Rams are in a weird spot because 2 years ago in 23, there was really no expectations, and they went on and made the playoffs. Last year, expectations went up a little bit. Like, okay, we should be a playoff team. They start slow and then wind up making the playoffs, and there were a couple of plays away from possibly upsetting the Eagles, who won the Super Bowls. So I think going into this year, they got even better in the offseason. I don't really see any major losses that are going to cause them to regress. So I think the expectation is really like, let's go to the Super Bowl and maybe win it. Their window is closing with Matthew Stafford getting older. They don't have a clear succession plan behind him. So it's kind of almost just like
Jimmy Garoppolo's not the plan. Jimmy Garoppolo's not the plan.
Stetson Bennett. There you go. Yeah, they got nothing behind him. There was reports about Jimmy G being someone that the Rams really liked, and they would go forward with him if Stafford left. But I mean, that can't be a serious succession plan.
That's clear that because though I will say, I'm like, Kyle Shanahan got everything he could out of Garoppolo. He was until Brock Purdy. It was staggering. He was like 9-34 with anyone other than Jimmy Garoppolo. That was staggering.
Yeah, it was amazing. So I was just going to say,
at the same time, because the division, it's not a sure thing. Like they have Super Bowl aspirations, but you look at the NFC West and you're like, can they win the division? Yeah, probably, but maybe. Yeah, the 49ers are better, markedly better than they were a year ago and won 8 games, and so they should be in the mix. And Seattle's the big question mark because you went from having all those receivers to having Cooper Kupp and Sam Darnold. Is the Sam Darnold any better than Geno Smith? I don't know.
Yeah, I know that was such a bizarre swap. It's like you're going from one middle of the road quarterback to another one, and then you're dumping DK Metcalf and letting go of Tyler Lockett for Cooper Kupp. So just kind of a weird offseason for the Seahawks. But I do agree they're the big question mark. Like the Cardinals, I know could be sneaky good. They've got some young talent there. They're going to be a good team, but I just don't really know what the Seahawks are gonna be. They could be anywhere from a 10-win team to a 5-win team. None of that would surprise me.
If the Rams do win this division, what do you think their ceiling and floor is in terms of wins and losses?
Fully healthy, I think they can win 12, 13 games. I think if Stafford gets hurt or Puka gets hurt again, their floor could be, 6 wins, 7 wins. Because it's not like the easiest schedule. You got the Ravens on it, the Lions, you've got the Bucks on there, the Eagles, and then obviously the whole division of the NFC West. They're going to have to take advantage of those, the AFC South, I think. Yeah, I think they got the AFC South. So they're going to have to take advantage of those games. But it's not an easy schedule. Like there's no super easy games on there. Even the Jaguars, I mean, they're going to have to play them in London, and that's a sneaky team too that is going to have some good talent, new coaches. So, yeah, I would say between 6 and 12, 13 wins is their floor to ceiling.
That's crazy. And
range.
they could be an 11-win division winner that goes all the way to Super Bowl. That's the thing about the NFC West. Like and the 49ers and Rams are kind of co-favorites. And then you get the Cardinals sneak it in as a number 3, but not really. No one really thinks that they can compete for the division, maybe a playoff spot. And then the Seahawks are like, we don't know.
Yeah.
But like in terms of players that you look at this year, how much more productive? So Verse gets 4.5 sacks last year. What do you think he performs at this year? Because there was a lot of pressures. How many of those does he turn into actual sacks in 2025?
He said himself he left 10 sacks on the field last year. And I didn't go back and count, but I can remember vividly in the beginning of the season him missing some sacks on guys like Brock Purdy, Kyler Murray, Caleb Williams. So he started to play with more discipline and understanding of where he has his rush opportunities and where he can go after the quarterback and where he's got to play within the structure of the play. So 10 sacks, 12 sacks would not surprise me one bit with him. I mean, he's just such a talented player, and I think he's going to have a really good year.
That front is this going to be, once again, like down the stretch, do you see this team that is led by its defense or led by its offense?
You would think the offense, just based on how much they're paying their offensive players and their offensive linemen and Stafford. But I mean, the defense. So the thing with the defense is you got that good front, but there's some questions in the secondary where those guys have to step up and play better than they did early last year, where they were getting torched a few times by some of these teams like the Cardinals. But if the secondary can come together and really complement that pass rush, it's going to be a defensive-led team, I think.
And awesome. And obviously, we were just talking about that. So as Rams fans, how do they view the 2 games against the Cardinals? I don't think this year is a year where they're like, those are obvious wins, but I think that it is basically every division game this year a kind of a toss-up in like, I see almost every division. I think the Cardinals are better than the Seahawks, but I don't know. But I see every single one of those division games. There's nobody you're like, yeah, pencil and win. It's more like, I hope they hold court at their stadium.
Yeah, I think even with my predictions game by game, I think I had them splitting each of the rivalries with the NFC West going 1-1. So I don't see them really dominating any of these teams. I know they've had the Cardinals number and they've played them so well over the years, but they're just Kyler Murray is a great equalizer. He can do a lot of special things and almost neutralize a pass rush. So I think that's going to be a tough game for them.
And you guys can find Cam's work on the Rams Wire. You can find it. Isn't your X account, social Twitter account, is it just Cam DaSilva?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so Cam DaSilva, that's his name. So you can find him on social media. You can find his work on Rams Wire. We'll probably hear from Cam leading up to at least one of the games late in the year as we preview those at the actual matchup. But Cam, thank you so much for your time as always. Every year, friend of the show. I don't know which episode this one is because I'm trying to get all those 14 shows recorded. I don't know in what order they will be. So take a look at Rams Wire. You will see at least weekly during the rest of the off season on Sundays. I write a feature that kind of goes down some of the biggest news from the last week that comes from Rams Wire. So you can catch that there. And most of that stuff is what you'll see. It's what Cam wrote. So thanks again for your time. That'll wrap up this edition of the Rise of Seared podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the web. We will continue with more shows coming back soon. Thanks for listening as always.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.